Hey guys, today I wanted to make a video about cause and effect, specifically when it comes to social studies. So, we've talked about cause and effect before, but sometimes it can show up or it can appear differently depending on what subject you're working on. So, cause and effect in social studies might be a little bit different than cause and effect when it comes to fiction and language arts. So, that's what we're going to talk about today. So a cause is just an action or an event that makes another event happen. So it's something that happens that makes another thing happen after it. Like, for instance, if you fall down and you get a bruise, the cause for that bruise is you falling down. So our cause would be falling down. And then our effect is something that happens as a result of, or it happens because of this cause. So when you fall down, the effect of falling down is getting a bruise. So the effect is the thing that happens after. And so a lot of the times there can be more than one cause for something, and there can be more than one effect. So for instance, let's say that we are talking about climate change. So the climate is changing. Summers are getting warmer, winters are getting colder. And so one of the causes of that, there could be more than one cause actually. So it could be the pollution we put in the air. Another cause is that it could be that the climate is just naturally changing. So it could be both of those things together. And then a lot of the times there's more than one effect. So for instance, if you don't study for your final exam in a class, the effect is that you fail that exam, but you also could fail that class, and then you have to take that class again, and then if you play a sport, maybe you're off the team. So there could be several different effects from something like that. But the big picture with cause and effect is we basically want to know how events are connected. How are these things that happened in the past, how did they affect things that happened later? So like in social studies, how did something that happened in Europe affect people in America? And we see things like this all the time in history, and we see it even today in politics and in government as well. So first, I just want to go over a couple of examples of cause and effect. Now, these aren't specifically social studies, but it just kind of gets our feet wet with how to use cause and effect. So, for instance, this first one, it says, your family has been living on the east coast of North America since 1864. Your town has become overcrowded and jobs are hard to find. Your pa has been out of work since January. There is talk about moving west to try your luck in Oregon. So what caused your family to want to move west? Why is your family moving west? You live on the east coast, your father doesn't like his work, your family needs money, or you don't appreciate where you live. Your family needs money, and your best bet to get that money you need is to go west. Now, on this second one, your grandparents are not happy to hear about you moving west. They feel they are too old for such a long trip. They own the house they live in and want to stay. Oregon is too far west for you to travel back and forth. So what effect will your move west have? You won't see your grandparents again. Your mom will stay behind. Your grandparents will move back to England, or you will leave your pets behind. You won't see your grandparents again. So there's nothing that says that, oh, your mom's going to stay behind. There's nothing that even mentions, your mom in this. It doesn't mention anything about England, and it doesn't mention anything about pets. So it has to be, hey, you won't see them again. And then number 3, the Oregon Trail Guidebook suggests that you buy a lot of goods to take with you on the trail. Your ma has to sell her jewelry and pa his pocket watch. You also have to sell the good rifle. You use the money to purchase 2 oxen. So what caused your family to sell their valuables? A, so you can get rid of them. B, so you can afford supplies for the trail. C, so you can buy another guidebook. Or D, so you can buy the house you live in. So it says that they purchase oxen, so that means that they're purchasing supplies for the trail. And then on this one, all across Independence Rock are names of the people who have come before you. There's a stone carver who offers to carve your name for you if you pay $1. You ask your pa for the money, but he tells you there are more important things to buy. So what caused Pa to say no to the carving? A, your family needs the money for supplies. B, he thinks it's too messy. C, he wants to carve it himself. Or D, he feels it is defacing public property. Yeah, you need the money for supplies. It says that that there are more important things to buy. And then these last two. You come to Courthouse Rock on the trail. Your brother has developed a cough from his fall into the Kansas River. The doctor has tried to give him some medicine, but it hasn't helped. He gets worse every day. So what effect did the fall into the water have? Your brother might die on the trail. You have to go back home. The doctor will be fired, or you have to stop at the next fort for more medicine. Technically, this one could be your brother might die on the trail, or you might have to stop at the next fort for more medicine. So again, sometimes there are more than one effect. And then this last one. After you reach the jumping off point for the Oregon Trail in Independence, Missouri, you go to Courthouse Square to sign up with a wagon train. Before you do, you have to sign a constitution of rules for the trail. In return, everyone will work together to make sure you reach Oregon. What caused your family to sign the contract? A, you don't want to be left behind. B, your family will have protection on the trail. C, your family will make more money. Or D, you think it's fun to write your name. Your family will have protection on the trail. So, basically, if you are in a wagon train, there's more people there. You can keep each other safe. You can be with like a guide who knows where they're going. You'll have more protection. Now, this is more of an example of what you might see on the actual GED test. This is during the era of the American Revolution. Northern and southern states were united behind the common goal of gaining independence from Britain. However, as time went by, differences between the regions grew pronounced. With the beginning of the 1800s, the South remained primarily agricultural. The Southern economy centered on plantations and the use of enslaved African laborers. The Northern economy, on the other hand, featured growing commercial and industrial sectors in addition to agriculture. These differences caused economic and ideological friction between the North and the South. Disputes over states' rights emerged as questions arose about the morality and legality of slavery in the U.S.'s territories. So they want to know, what is an effect of these regional differences that emerged between the North and the South in the early to mid-1800s? So what happened because the North and the South had these differences? A, northern states strongly supported states' rights. B, the South began using the labor of enslaved people. C, the northern economy became increasingly diverse. Or D, northern farmers began establishing plantations. Now, I know that it's not D because the passage says that the North relied more on industry. So it's not D. C says the northern economy became increasingly diverse. So it says the northern economy, they had commercial sectors, they had industrial sectors, and agriculture. So yeah, they had a lot of different things that they relied on. So yeah, it is C. Now this one is a little bit longer, so I want you to pause the video and read this passage about Jefferson, and then we will go over these questions on this page. So pause the video and then take some time to read this passage. Okay. So on number 2, they ask, to what did President Thomas Jefferson refer as the rock upon which the old Union would split? So he says there's this rock that the Union would split on. So what is he referring to? What is that rock? So let's go back and let's look. So what's he talking about when he says the rock upon which the Union would split? So he's talking about slavery. So the rock that the Union would split over is slavery. So basically what he's saying is like, what's the issue that the country would divide over? And so what was the issue that the country divided over? Slavery. Now let's look at number 3. Stevens claims that Jefferson and other American forefathers believed slavery would cease to exist due to what? So they thought that slavery would eventually stop because of what? So let's go back. Why did they think that slavery would eventually stop? So if we look at the passage, this says the prevailing ideas entertained by him and most of the leading statesmen at the time of the formation of the old Constitution were that the enslavement of the African was in violation of the laws of nature, that it was wrong in principle, socially, morally, and politically. It was an evil they knew not well how to deal with, but the general opinion of the men of that day was that somehow or other, in the order of providence, the institution would be evanescent and pass away. So basically, they said that it would cease to exist because people would realize that it was wrong. They would realize that, this says the Constitution, it is true, secured every essential guarantee to the institution while it should last, and hence no argument can be justly urged against the constitutional guarantees thus secured, because the common sentiment of the day. Those ideas, however, were fundamentally wrong. They rested upon the assumption of the equality of races. This was an error. It was a sandy foundation, and the government built upon it fell when the storm came and the wind blew. And then it says our government is founded upon exactly the opposite idea. The foundations are laid, its cornerstone rests upon the great truth that the Negro is not equal to the white man, that slavery, subordination to the superior race, is his natural and normal condition. So basically, they're saying that they believe that slavery would cease to exist due to what they call the order of providence. It's somehow or other in the order of providence the institution would be evanescent and pass away. So the order of providence is what would make it go away. And then number 4 says, the blank, according to Stevens, guarantees that slavery will continue to exist. So the blank, according to Stevens, guarantees that slavery will continue to exist. So what is it that guarantees that slavery will continue to exist? The new what? The new government. So our new government is going to keep it around, basically. And then number 5, the institution of slavery, claims Stevens, is a natural and normal condition, because the white and African races are what? So he says this is natural, it's normal, according to him. Why? So if we look in here, it says, they rested upon the assumption of the equality of races. This was an error. So he's saying, hey, they thought that the races were equal. He is saying that they are not. Obviously, he is wrong. But that was his thinking back in the day. Alright, now this one is about the Russian Revolution. So I want you to pause the video, and I want you to read that, and then we'll go over questions 1 through 2 together. Okay, so number 1 they ask, to what did the U.S. object in the aftermath of the Russian Revolution? So what was it that the U.S. didn't agree with, that they opposed, that they were like, no, that's awful, we don't want that? So was it the rise of the Red Army? Was it the formation of the USSR? The defeat of the White Army? Or was it the spread of communism? It is letter D. Oops. Sorry about that. D. I'll just write it. So, if we look in the passage, it says the U.S. viewed communism as a political and ideological threat. These political differences paved the way for a Cold War between the Soviet Union and the U.S. So, they objected to the spread of communism. That was their big thing against this Russian Revolution. It doesn't say that they had anything against the Red Army or the USSR or the White Army losing. They did not want communism to spread. And then number 2 says, what was one effect of the Russian Revolution? So if we look in here, so it mentions the Russian Revolution up here at the beginning. So, the Tsar, or he was basically the guy that was in charge of the government in Russia. So they kicked him out. They didn't want him in charge anymore. Actually, they ended up murdering him and his whole family. So they got rid of him, and then they put Lenin in charge. And they started this Bolshevik Red Army. And so the White Army was against them. And so that led to them fighting. It was the Red Army versus the White Army. And so because these people were fighting, the Red Army and the White Army, eventually that led to even more fighting. So it said the Red Army supported the establishment of the world's first communist state, which eventually became the USSR. And so the USSR, it wanted communism to spread everywhere. And the US was like, no, we don't agree with communism. It's bad. It doesn't need to spread everywhere. And so because they butted heads over their ideas about communism, that started the Cold War between the Soviet Union and the United States. So that caused the Cold War. So what was the effect of that Russian Revolution? The Cold War. So if they hadn't gotten rid of the Tsar and his family, if communism hadn't come into power, that wouldn't have started this whole Cold War between Russia and the United States. Now this next one is about the GI Bill. So the cause of the GI Bill is that veterans were returning to the U.S. from World War II, and they were facing unemployment, undereducation, and poverty. So they went and they served their country, and then they came back, and they couldn't find jobs, they couldn't find places to live. It was just a really bad situation. So this says So that was the cause, the effect. On June 22nd, 1944, President FDR signed the GI Bill, which was administered by the VA to help veterans reassimilate into society. So it gave them $20 a week, it helped pay for them to go to college, and it gave them loans for homes and farms and businesses. And so it was one of the biggest pieces of legislation the government ever produced, and it affected the U.S. socially, economically, and politically. So they want to know what was the cause of the GI Bill passing. A, FDR was responsible for bringing the U.S. into World War II. B, unemployed veterans needed education, training, and assistance with housing. C, the VA needed to add employees to its workforce. Or D, colleges and universities were lacking sufficient numbers of students. So what was it that the passage said? The passage said that they couldn't find jobs, and they needed help with training, education, and housing. And then number 18, which of the following is the most important effect of the GI Bill for veterans? So what's the most important thing that came out of this bill? The VA was formed, veterans received tax benefits, veterans received school, job, and housing benefits, or President Roosevelt was reelected. So which of these was the most important effect out of that? It is C. And so the reason it's C, if you look at the bottom part of this, it says it was one of the most significant pieces of legislation because it impacted them socially, economically, politically. And so these things help them reassimilate back into society, And so the VA is great, tax benefits are great, Roosevelt getting reelected, sure, but veterans being able to go to school, to get jobs, to get housing benefits, that had a greater impact than the rest of these. All right, now I want you to pause the video and read this passage about Great Britain and President Truman, and then we'll go over questions 20 and 21 together. Okay, so number 20 says, what was President Truman's justification for requesting financial assistance for Turkey and Greece? So basically, why did he suggest that we needed to give them money, that we needed to help them? A, he wanted the U.S. to take the place of Britain as a world power. B, he wanted the countries to become democratic. C, the countries had fallen to the Soviet Union and had become communist countries. Or D, the countries were weakened, close to the Soviet Union, and vulnerable to communism. So if we look at the passage, so for instance, if you look in that first paragraph, so Greece is going through a civil war, Turkey needs financial help, and they were close to the communist Soviet Union. It seemed possible that both countries might fall under its growing regional power. So they weren't communist yet. So I know that my answer isn't C. They weren't communist yet. But they were worried that because of where they were financially, they were going through war, and because they were close to the Soviet Union, they thought that they could fall to them, to communism. And so, where they had been in financial trouble and they were going through a civil war, they were weakened, and because they were close to the Soviet Union, they were vulnerable to them. And then look at 21. What effect of the domino theory worried U.S. government leaders? A, the U.S. might have to support countries formerly supported by Britain. If one nation fell to communism, another weak neighboring nation might also fall. If the U.S. provided financial assistance to one country, other weak neighboring countries would expect aid. Or D, small countries such as Greece or Turkey could not govern themselves properly. So this domino effect. So let's look in our passage. Where does it mention the domino effect? So the domino effect is right here. So this says the government officials discussed the domino theory, which predicted that if one nation fell to Soviet communism, weakened neighboring states would also fall. So, which of those choices goes with what we just read? Letter B. Right. So they were worried if one of those countries fell to communism, then the other ones might too. So that's it for this video about cause and effect in social studies. So I hope this helped you out. Be sure to check out our Google Classroom for a self-check just to check your knowledge on this, and look for more videos, some more material in the Google Classroom to help you study for the GED, and I hope you guys have a great day. See you later.